welcome to Records Rebuilds, and it's been 2 months of ownership with the C8 Z07. So I thought I'd share some of my impressions, and more importantly, some of my wife's impressions. So you can't say you love a car. It's a thing, not a person, right? So the car has been really good. It's exceeded my expectations. After a 2.5 year wait, I think that would have been really difficult. But I haven't gotten it out on the track yet, so this is just kind of like a mini review. We'll try to keep it under 10 minutes, and I'll tell you, what I've enjoyed so far. Haven't in the future, actually, certainly by the end of October, we'll get it out on the track for you, and then I can give you a full review. But this is just going to be kind of like things you'd notice on the street, in your neighborhood, little things. So the first one is that since I haven't been able to get this car on the track, one thing I'm really, really glad that I sprung for, it never gets old, is the front end lift, right? So it's up right now, and if I hit the button, just like, focus on the garage door, and you can see it comes down 4 inches. I have a big curb in my driveway, so that is really helpful to me. And here's the thing, I was really on the fence about this because I wanted to get a 1LT car, and so just that little up and down there, like, the other things come with the 2LT, like this thing here that lets you charge, and the front camera right there. I really wanted that, but it's kind of some dinky stuff for what ends up being about $12,000. I was really worried that I would regret that because, again, I wanted a 1LT. It's a little bit lighter, not much, maybe like 80 pounds or something like that, but it's a little bit lighter, a little more track focused. I'm really glad that I went with the 2LT because I know this is insane, but of all the insane, awesome things about this car, the one that gives me the most kick out of it on a regular basis is that little up and down of the front end, because you use it in your everyday life every single time. So I'm really glad I got it. 2 quick things about the front end lift. The first is that this car, even with the Z07 package, has better ground clearance than my C7 Z51 because of that lift. Like, I never scraped this car, ever. Like, I haven't scraped it once, and that's been amazing. I did not expect that at all. I expected even with the lift it would be difficult. And then the second thing is that right after I got this car, there was a period of time where, like, the lift would make a loud metallic screeching, like I thought the whole thing was about to come apart, like almost like that. And I had a friend who had one that did the same thing, and he was like, just leave it. It'll go away. It went away on mine. And he's been right. The sound went away, and it has never come back, and I have no idea what it was. I don't know if the front lift will fail someday. I know that's a thing that's been common with these cars. But right now, it's looking perfect. Okay, so now on to things my wife doesn't like about this car. And it's true. Like, literally, sometimes, because I want my wife to enjoy this car like I do. Like, it's very important to me that she enjoys it. And so sometimes I will park the cars in a way to where all of them are blocked in except for this car. So she has to take it. And then she always gives me like a side eye because she doesn't like this car as well as the C7. 2 reasons. One of them is that the DCT dual clutch transmission is really kind of a bother at very low speeds idling around the parking lot. It does this like hill rollback resistance thing that makes it in our particular garage, so you kind of have to gun it and then hit the brakes so that you don't run into the end of the garage, and that is annoying. And she feels like in the grocery store parking lot, it is like not the easiest thing the way this runs the gears at low speed, and I have to say I do agree with her. Now the dual clutch is flawless in every other way, and it's awesome, and it's way better than the automatic in the C7 Z51, just way better, and it's so cool. But it's not great at low speed idling around a parking lot. I think the old automatics, the slush boxes, were better at doing that, but for everything else this transmission is better. So she's gonna have to learn to deal with it. The other one, though, is one that I've heard from a lot of other people. They feel like this car doesn't have enough torque. It's not responsive enough. She feels like the one thing she wants is I can mash the pedal and it just sucks me back into my seat. And she doesn't feel like this car does that as well as the C7 Z51. And I'm going to show you why she might be right and what you can do to make sure you don't have that experience. Because I promise you, it's just the way you're using the car. This car has plenty more power and plenty more torque than that old C7 Z51, and it's easy to get the right experience from it if you just do it right. Okay, so a quick editor's note here. The first is so that I can show off this awesome t-shirt that my daughter made me, and the second is that when I was putting this video together, I realized that I failed to mention that everything I'm saying here about the way this transmission shifts and the way that it works is about if you leave it in automatic shifting mode. If you use the paddles, obviously you can have the revs be anywhere you want them to be, and you can control how much torque you have available. I think most people who complain about this car not having enough torque or not being fast enough or feeling fast enough are people who leave it in automatic mode. And so keep that in mind when you watch this next part. Okay, so why does my wife feel like this car doesn't have as much torque as our C7? Well, it's the torque curve. This car makes all of its torque between 3,000 RPM and 8,600 RPM. So in the words of my daughter's children's book, you gotta keep the revs up. If you want that rocket ship feeling from this car, it's gotta be above 3,000 RPM. So right now, we're just tooling around at 45 miles an hour. We'll speed up a little bit so we can get to 45 miles an hour, but we're going around at 45 miles an hour, and this car really wants to keep the revs at about 1,500 RPMs when it's in touring mode. That's a gas mileage thing. It doesn't want to use up all the gas, so it just keeps it right here around 1,500 RPMs while I'm going at 45 miles an hour. Now, if you want to repeat this experiment, you can't do it with the cruise control on. It's got to be with your foot. So watch what happens when I move into sport mode. So the car automatically downshifts for me, and now it may shift in a second here, but it's wanting to keep those RPMs up around 2,500, which is still not ideal as far as the torque curve goes, but it wants to keep it around 2,500. All right, so here we are again after that stoplight, still at 45 miles an hour. Now in sport mode, it's keeping it around 2,000 RPM. So watch what happens when we go to track mode here. All right, so in track mode, it will not let you get below 3,000 RPMs. It literally will not do it. I mean, you can switch with the paddles if you really want to, but if you've got it in computer controlled mode, in track mode, it's never going to get you below 3,000. In fact, it's going to keep it above 3,500 most of the time, and that's because it wants you to have instant power. Now, the problem with that is it sounds like this all the time. It is always freaking angry. And like, it needs to have that level of sound. It needs to make that level of noise if you want to get good torque out of it, because it's just a different style of engine that needs to be wound up higher to make that kind of torque. But literally, this is how it sounds when you're just driving around your neighborhood. I'm going to show you a video in just a second of what it sounds like to drive in track mode in my neighborhood at 30 miles an hour, and it is just insane. So like, this is how you're driving around if you want to get the same level of torque that I get from my C7 Stingray. It's always angry. It is furious all the time, and it is flat out amazing. Also, I really love this feature. My 5-year-old loves it too. But when you switch modes, it always gives you a visual animation of your car doing that thing, and you can see it's programmed to know that I have the Z07 package because it's got the spoiler on the back, which is just, you know, that's a really cool touch. Like, you can tell they care about this car. They spent the extra time on this car, and I mean, look at this. This is just me driving at 30 miles an hour down the street. Like, it's crazy. It is a crazy, crazy car, and I love it. So this is what it is just to drive around at like 40 to 50 miles an hour on my regular route in maximum torque mode, which is track mode. but like, it's crazy to drive this way on the street. It is so stinking loud. Just like, look what it's like to go around my neighborhood at 30 miles an hour. It's just a lot, even at 30 miles an hour. It's crazy, but it's got that engine spooled up and it is ready to go, you know? If you're above 30 miles an hour and you hit it, you will feel more torque than with the old LS, or at least just as much. But it's, like I said, I mean, it's not really meant for neighborhood driving, so I don't think most people are gonna wanna drive around their neighborhood sounding like this. And so my wife is gonna have to realize, if you want that rocket ship feeling, then you gotta turn the dial. And if you don't want the rocket ship feeling, then just turn the dial to touring mode or something like that, or sport mode. And you won't have quite as much torque, but you won't sound like the apocalypse. So that's the way to deal with that. Okay, so one last thing I wanted to talk about, and that is just the general feel of this car. Now, to me, the C7 Stingray and the C8 Stingray feel very much like the same car. I've driven both of those cars. I've driven both of those cars on the racetrack, and they are both amazing, but they both feel largely the same all the way back to the C5. It's just a better experience every time, but it's a lot the same experience. And that's because it's amazing and I love it. And I love pushrod V8s. And if I could only have one thing for the rest of my life, the pushrod V8 would be it. But this car sounds insane. As you've already heard, if the C7 and C8 Stingrays feel very much the same, the C8's a little more planted in the rear end. This car feels as different from those cars as those cars feel from a Tesla. That is how different it feels to me. Now, you may think I'm exaggerating. It's probably largely because I've always driven pushrod V8s and I love those cars, but this car is amazing. It is an experience. It is something totally different, and I love it. I mean, like, it feels much more like an event every time I drive the car, and it's just absolutely great. So, with that in mind, I really wanted you guys to get to experience the sound of this car, and I have a friend with a 360-degree camera, and it can shoot really cool shots behind the car, and so I let him take the car out and put it through its paces. Now, I'm not condoning anything. I can't tell if he broke the speed limit in these videos, but don't do that. That's what the racetrack is for. The only place I break the speed limit is on the racetrack, and that's what you should do too. Not meaning to glorify speeding or anything, just wanting to showcase some really, really awesome engine sounds. So we'll drop that footage right now, and I will see you guys next time.